Well, with a fresh dumping of snow on the ground, we aren't thinking about our gardens right now. Well, there are the indoor gardens, I guess, but there's still things that we can do ahead of next year and even for the holiday season. We are joined this morning by our buddy Perry from Ellerslie Gift and Garden and Classic Landscapes. Good morning, Perry. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, of course. Good morning, Mike.
So a lot of us are procrastinators, and as a result of that, we saw all those leaves on the ground. We figured, we got a couple more days, then it snows, and now we got a few more months. Is that an issue, the fact that we left these leaves unraked?
Yeah, the short answer is no. Obviously, decomposition of plant material is going to arrest over the winter months, and there's going to be leaves there when the snow melts in the spring, but that's okay. I mean, frankly, that's a pretty typical thing in Mother Nature anyway. And so when we get to the spring, maybe you'll have a little bit more work left for yourself, but it's not going to harm, the yard or anything like that. Sometimes what can happen if you have a huge amount of leaves, you can get a bit more of the molds and things like that. And it's a bit more messy in the spring when you have to deal with it. But, functionally speaking, it's still going to be okay for your yard. And again, just something you're going to have to deal with in the spring.
What about, I have this particular tree, actually it's my neighbor's tree, but it leans over into my yard, that it never loses its leaves. It will eventually. I think now they're just starting to turn yellow, but they haven't dropped off. Is that a concern?
It's not, and like you mentioned, it typically is certain trees that will do that more often. Ash trees, green ash, black ash, they drop their leaves really early. They haven't had leaves for weeks, and sometimes people lament the fact they don't get any coverage through the month of September. But things like Swedish aspens, Russian olives, those kinds of plants, you'll see them hold their leaves quite long. Some of them even well into January. And again, it's just something that's typical to those plants, and so again, not a concern, no big deal. Maybe just gives you something a little bit extra to enjoy through those winter months.
Yeah, tough for people who want to get out there and rake their leaves. There are those people out there, right, that buy all the new rakes and everything and got the garbage bags ready and no leaves. Anyway, let's move on to where we are right now, Perry, which is in a situation where we're back to the slippery sidewalks and the driveways and time to determine what exactly to use so that we have some traction. Do you go with the salt, or do you go with the chips, or how do you make that decision, Perry?
Yeah, there are lots of choices out there, and I think one of the things when we talk about marketing and branding, you see lots of, pet safe for the environment, won't harm your plants, but then you look at every product and it almost says that on every bag. And so, kind of wading, through all that information and making the right decision. The bottom line is when we use the term sodium chloride, often called rock salt, that'll be the most inexpensive. It's typically white. It won't generally have any dyes. That one's going to be actually the most harmful to your concrete. And again, it is, cost effective, but it's not really a good idea to use. The other thing about rock salt, or sodium chloride more specifically, is that it only, melts the ice to -10, -15 at the most. And in our environment, that's just not going to cut it for, the doldrums of winter. And so I would stay away from rock salt or sodium chloride when we're making that decision. Again, you can save a few bucks, but it's not worth it in the short or the long run. Typically speaking, the best performers for us are going to be mixtures that have calcium chloride in it. They can melt, into the low -30s. And again, that's something that we're going to be looking at on a typical basis. So again, look for calcium chloride. And it's interesting when you talk about, pet safe or environmentally safe overall, there's always a caveat that overuse or over-application can be a problem. And I think that's the key. Calcium chloride can be safe when used as directed, just like potassium chloride is another one you'll see. Potassium chloride kind of doesn't melt quite as cold, maybe -20, -23. There is some studies that try to show that it's better for plants because potassium is something plants use. But again, at the end of the day, if you're putting tons and tons on your driveways and sidewalks and not following label instructions, it doesn't replace a shovel. It's just meant to get the ice at that last level off the ground.
Well, you talked about the chips affecting the pavement, the driveways, that type of thing, your sidewalks. But what about how they affect your lawn or maybe any plants that they happen to touch?
Yeah, well, that's one of the advantages when we look at, ice melt versus rock chips. Again, if you follow label instructions, shovel it off the driveway, shovel it off the sidewalks in moderate amounts and don't go overkill. A lot of times we'll see people, maybe we get that 8 inches of snow and, hey, we're all busy. We don't have the time to shovel. So we figure if we throw a bunch of ice melt down, it'll melt that snow by the time we get home. And that's not really the way to go about it. You can use things like rock chips, or actually are mechanical. So the rock chips provide traction grit. A lot of times you'll see that term, traction grit, which a lot of times can be an igneous product. So like a lava rock gives you a bit of grip. Those are safe because they're not chemical based at all. And so having the odd rock chip, work its way into your soil. It's not going to be unhealthy at all. So that's one way you can do about it. Or something that is available now that we have that's super popular is a mix of ice melt with rock chips. So you sort of get the best of both worlds. Give you some instant traction. And again, if you're using calcium chloride, it's an exothermic product, so it's going to work twice as fast, something like a rock salt. And so you really can get the best of both worlds. But again, if we can get out there and shovel quickly and use ice melt as we need to, that really is the best formula.
All right, Perry, lots of valuable information today. Thanks for coming on. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, take care.
For more great ideas on how you can take care of your driveway, take care of your garden, then you can just contact Classic Landscapes in Ellerslie Gift and Garden. All the information you need is up on your screen right now.